So once you've got that neutral fulcrum established, it's time to start learning how to control the sticks. A lot of you probably know George Stone's stick control book, which is where this sort of concept comes from. But the way I approach it is very much from degrees of relaxation, learning to control the sticks by first learning how to not control it. In other words, completely zeroing out your technique. So I call this the zeroed out stroke. And it's a good idea when we get to stick control that you, even though you've probably played these patterns and these exercises a bazillion times, or even if you haven't, it's good to approach them with the mind of a beginner. And there's a great quote from the Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki, who said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, and the expert's mind, there are few." And stick control is one of these great exercises to revisit with this kind of beginner's mind. So let's start with the zeroed out stroke. The concept of this zeroed out stroke is to learn degrees of looseness, all right? And thinking of control as kind of a dial to be dialed in and dialed out. So dialing the control in when you need it, dialing it out when you don't. What I'm doing here is I'm basically just throwing the stick at the pad and letting it go. I'm letting it turn around my middle finger and thumb. That's the pivot point, the fulcrum. I'm letting my wrist be loose, my elbow, my shoulder involved a little bit here. We're going to talk about molar stroke down the road. This is not really molar stroke yet. This is just a degree of looseness in our body, just feeling the mechanics of how that works. So that's completely zeroed out. To get to stick control, what you do is you do continuous motion. So I would turn up that dial. I like to think of control on a dial from, let's say, 0 to 100. So if I turn it up to, just a few steps there, then I can just keep that stroke going. All right, going just high enough to where it's got a nice rounded, no stopping motion, but nice rounded motion here. I'm using mostly wrist, a little bit of arm. In this case, my back fingers do remain in contact with the stick. My thumb and my index are stabilizing. And that's basically then the right hand to the first pattern of stick control, just alternating strokes, which it doesn't get much more simple than that. And that's the first exercise of stick control. Now, if you go down below in the description, you'll find a link to the document from my clinic, Foundation for Practice, Snare Drum Fundamentals. And I'm going to be playing through some of these exercises for you. And I'll start with this one level control. So in the clinic, I talk about how we need to have, so I go through, as I just did with the neutral fulcrum and the zeroed out stroke, and then we talk about levels of control. So the first level of control is to be able to play flat, long tones, if you will. All right, and that's what stick control exercise is all about. It's basically a percussionist version of long tones. All right, so if you're looking at my packet, they're written as 16th notes, and you want to practice this. It's not called speed control, it's called stick control. So it's not to be practiced fast. It should be practiced at a medium tempo, so somewhere between 80 to 100. This is 92 beats per minute for the quarter note. And I'm just going to run down a couple of these exercises for you. And while I'm playing, I'm going to talk about kind of what I'm thinking about as this exercise goes on. So I'm thinking about trying to play with the same height of the stroke. I'm thinking about trying to play with the same weight in each hand. I'm feeling my back fingers. I'm trying to use just enough control to do this motion. And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm also thinking about where my beads are placed on the pad. I try to aim for like a 1-inch circle in the center of the pad. I think about the height of rise of the stick. Am I playing a nice rounded stroke there with no stopping anywhere? I'm trying to think about the tempo. Am I being consistent over time? Okay, and so with George Stone's book, he says 20 times for each exercise. But if you're like me, I don't like to do that much counting. And so what I do is just do each exercise for a minute or so, and then go directly to the next. And I think that going directly to the next thing is really the key, as well as playing the exercise for a long time. So I'm going to switch to the next one, exercise number 2, which is just doubles. The goal is that these should really sound the same as the singles if you can. I mean, your right hand and your left hand are inherently different, but you want to try to see if you can make them sound the same. One of the things to notice on this double stroke is the floating motion after the second note of the double. You'll notice how there's no stopping motion here. Everything is floating, so when that second double happens, the stick still is coming to the up position. So I'll demonstrate, if I were to stop the stroke, it would look something like that. Okay, and that causes, it's a result of me putting more control on my back fingers than I need. What I want is to let go at that point, so when you play that second double, the stick should come back up. Again, I'm thinking of all of those same things that we were talking about before. Thinking about the time, thinking about the space between the notes, thinking about the weight of each stroke. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Paradiddles. Same concept. Here we have 2 sort of different strokes, floating ideas. You have the first two, the first 2 are singles. And then you have those doubles again. So if I isolate one hand, you just want to make sure there's no stopping. A lot of times with paradiddle, students want to play accented paradiddles, which is all fine, but this is about playing long tones of playing flat. Okay, from there, my packet goes into much longer exercises. So exercise number 4, for instance, you could play for 2 or 3 minutes because there's lots of repetitions and it's just a longer, more concentrated kind of exercise. So I would encourage you to explore that one and explore all of those stick control exercises in this packet. And stay tuned for the next installment.